A UV map is a file that communicates how a 2D image is wrapped around a 3D object. In this module, we'll learn how to create UV maps in 3ds Max, as well as how to create them in Unreal Engine after the model's been imported. So, what exactly is a UV map? A UV is a 2D representation of a 3D object in a 0 to 1 grid. The letters U, V, and W correlate to X, Y, and Z for a given 3D object. Typically, a UV map is created in a 3D modeling program when the 3D geometry is created. Primarily, we use these to determine how materials in Unreal Engine are applied to an object. Therefore, if we don't have proper UV maps, or we haven't taken care to optimize the scale, position, or rotation of the maps, we may have issues with how materials are applied when we are in Unreal Engine. Any 3D model can have multiple UV maps. The first UV map channel is typically used for materials, and the second channel is typically used for light baking. A light map UV is used to determine how baked lights and shadows are displayed on the object. These can be created automatically in Unreal Engine when you import a model, but you may want to create your own light map UVs in your 3D modeling program. Let's create our first UV that we will use for the material on this table. First, select all of the faces on the object, then add a modifier. If you wanted to create your UV based on a geometric shape, you could choose UVW map. But I simply want to unwrap this 3D model onto a UV grid, so I'll choose Unwrap UVW. Notice that by default, we're applying this UV to Map Channel 1. Remember, our first channel will be used for materials in Unreal Engine. Under Edit UVs, choose Open UV Editor. And here, we can see all of the faces of our object. We can see which is which by selecting them in this window. I would like to simply flatten this 3D model onto the grid, so I'll go up to Mapping and choose Flatten Mapping. Rotate clusters might cause some faces to be oriented the wrong direction, so I'll uncheck that. UVs created for textures do not need to be constrained to the size of the grid, so uncheck Normalize Clusters. Remember, UVs created for light maps do need to be constrained to the size of the grid, so you should always keep that option checked when creating light map UVs. Hit OK and close out of the window. We could also add a second Unwrap UVW modifier and choose Map Channel 2 for our light map UV, open the editor, choose Flatten Mapping, and normalize and rotate clusters. If you know some parts of the model should have greater light map resolution in Unreal Engine, you could even scale some of these shapes to make the more important areas larger. Just be sure that they don't overlap and they don't go beyond the edges of the grid. At this point, we could add a map scaler modifier to all of our 3D models in the project to scale the overall size of our materials. This can be helpful if our materials are being displayed too large or too small in Unreal Engine. I'll select all geometry, go to Modifiers, Map Scaler, and set the scale to 100 centimeters. By doing this, we're ensuring that all of our materials will be applied at the same uniform scale. This will be really important for when we import our model as a Datasmith file. Let's export this table as an FBX file and import it into Unreal Engine. When we import the 3D model, we have a checkbox here to automatically generate UVs for light maps. Usually, this will produce a really nice result, but sometimes you may want to create your own light maps externally. Import, then let's double-click the file in our content browser to open the Static Mesh Editor window. And if we go up to UVs at the top of the window, we can see the UVs that we had created in our 3D modeling program. By default, this first UV is the one we created for our materials, the second is the one we created for our light map, and the third is the automatically generated UV that we created on import. We didn't need to create an auto-generated UV, but sometimes the new UV could be better for the light map. You can specify which UV will be used for built lighting by scrolling down to the details and indicating which UV you'd like to use here. Now that our geometry is modeled, optimized, and properly UV mapped, it's time to export our entire 3ds Max file. In the next module, we'll learn about the Datasmith file type and the Datasmith attributes modifier.